Hi everyone, welcome to Gallant IAS, IPS in seconds. Here we are discussing the probable questions for UPSC 2020 prelims. So the question is, in the context of Indian economy, consider the following statements. The size of GDP has steadily increased in the last 5 years. The GDP growth rate has steadily increased in the last 5 years. Here the question is regarding the size of GDP and the GDP growth. These kinds of questions UPSC asked in the previous years. So this is very important. Size of GDP and GDP growth. What is the difference between them? GDP size. In 2020, the size of GDP is $2.96 trillion. $2.96 trillion. 1 trillion is around 1 lakh crore. 1 lakh crore. So $2.96 trillion means around 217 lakh crore rupees. In 2018-19, this size is $2.8 trillion. In 2018, this was $2.6 trillion. So year by year, for the last couple of 20 or 25 years, Indian economy never contracted or the growth rate become negative. Every year we are increasing year by year. Even though the growth rate is changing and fluctuating, the size of GDP every year is increasing. Last 3 years from 2006, $2.6 trillion to $2.8 trillion and $2.96 trillion. So the size of GDP is increasing for the last couple of years. So the first statement is correct. The size of GDP has steadily increased in the last 5 years. Correct statement. Second, the GDP growth rate has steadily increased in the last 5 years. So what is the difference between size of GDP and GDP growth rate? Then how we calculate GDP growth rate? Comparing the size of GDPs of different years. That is, if you calculate the GDP growth rate of 2020, how we calculate the size of GDP at 2020 minus 2090, size of GDP at 2090 divided by size of GDP at 2090. That is GDP size of current year minus GDP size of previous year divided by GDP size of previous years. That is the equation to calculate growth into 100. And this is mean 2.96 minus 2.8 divided by 2.8 trillion into 100. That is 4.8 last year. That is just 4.8 last year. And this growth rate in 2090 is 6.2. In 2080, this was 7%. So year by year, this growth rate is decreasing. 2080 7%, then 29 6.2, the last year 4.8%. Even though the GDP size is increasing, the growth is fluctuating. Last couple of years, the growth rate is diminishing. So the second statement is wrong. The GDP growth rate has steadily increased in the last 5 years. Wrong statement. So the answer is option A, one only. Thank you.